New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Hey, if you're anywhere near Milwaukee, you have to join me on Sunday, May 10th, for the new documentary film, Steal This Story, Please. All about independent journalist Amy Goodman and her program Democracy Now! You know, we are big fans. We talk about the show all the time, recommend it. Academy Award nominees Carl Deal and Tia Lesson directing Steal This Story, Please. Sunday, May 10th, 12 noon. Get up early, come on over. Oriental Theater in Milwaukee. Amy Goodman and the directors will be there in person for a Q&A following the film. I'm really looking forward to this. If you're somewhere else in the country, please look it up. It's playing in various cities. But if you're in southeastern Wisconsin or northern Illinois, come on over. I'd love to see you. Again, that's Sunday, May 10th, right at the crack of noon, 12 p.m., Oriental Theater, Milwaukee. Steal This Story, Please. And with that announcement, I also have a small correction. Last time we spoke, I kept referring to the Voting Rights Act as the Civil Rights Act. I think I did it a couple of times. Not a big mistake, but all mistakes annoy me. And I just want you to know that I made that mistake. Not the first time I've made it. The 64 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, or is it the other way around? I always do that. And while we're correcting things, I also mentioned briefly the ban on mifepristone. A lower court ordered that it was disallowed from prescriptions by mail, telehealth prescriptions. Well, right after you and I spoke, the Supreme Court issued a temporary stay, so that's the good news. Mifepristone available, including through the U.S. mail. Of course, the story's not over. We'll see how the High Court decides to deal with this in the future. But as we speak, for the moment, mifepristone back in business. If I had $1 billion, if I had $1 billion, yeah, Congress is set to authorize $1 billion, as Dr. Evil would say, pinky finger poised at the lip. They're putting it in their catch-all bill for ICE and CBP, giving another cool $70 billion to Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Protection, the ICE thugs, the Orange Menace's private Gestapo. They got it all worked out, all wrapped up with a pretty little bow with their reconciliation package, which means they don't need any Democratic votes. Of course, I suppose they'll get Fetterman anyway, of course. But the ballroom now is included. $1 billion for the ballroom. Started at $200 million. That was the original budget. Then it was $300. Then it was $400. None of it tax money, all private donations. Now it's $1 billion. 100% your tax money. And not only that, the lawsuit that was brought by preservationists, historians, arguing that the whole thing is illegal, that the Orange Menace didn't go through correct channels, just started construction without anybody's permission. Against the law. He can't do that. He doesn't own the White House. And a judge agreed and put a halt to the project. Well, it looks like they found a workaround there too. It's quite possible, in fact it's likely, that this judge will find that, congressional authorization? I guess it's all right then. Go ahead. Get the heavy equipment back in here. Let's get this project going again. So some of us, certainly I was confident at one point that this ridiculous ballroom was never going to see the light of day. Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't see how they stop it now. I've also said in the past that whoever the next president is has to take a wrecking ball to whatever this guy builds. But how do you tear down $1 billion ballroom? I don't know. And of course the whole security angle to it is, well, there's always been a bunker under the East Wing, ever since, I forget now which president put it in. But it's been there for many, many decades. It's nothing new. But now it's going to be a mega bunker I guess there's going to be a hospital, there's going to be special communications, everything you need in a bunker. And then the ballroom itself, claiming that it's, steel, reinforced, indestructible, 7-inch glass, can't be bombed. They're making real sort of Titanic promises here. The Titanic was unsinkable. This ballroom is indestructible, they say. Nothing like laying down a challenge. So the repugnance in Congress, MAGA gone mad, giving $1 billion of your dollars to this insanity. And it looks like it's going to happen. Well, Monday started with a bang, quite literally. United Arab Emirates on the wrong side of Iranian cruise missiles and drones and so-called fast boats getting hit. Iran also shot at U.S. ships. The Orange Menace pretended not to know about that when asked, because just hours earlier he had threatened to wipe Iran off the face of the earth if they attacked a U.S. ship. So he just pretended he didn't know. He did know about the South Korean ship that was attacked in the Strait of Hormuz, but he didn't care about that. Oh, that's not our problem. That's South Korea. That's a whole other country. This is just getting more and more ridiculous. So bullets are flying, bombs are dropping once again. Oh, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the ceasefire. What? Just like the constant shooting and bombing in Lebanon doesn't mean that ceasefire is over. Well, of course it does. So we woke up Monday morning to the big announcement of Project Freedom. Yeah, they give it a goofy name, like they're a character in Dr. Strangelove, and they think we're going to get all excited. Well, this so-called Project Freedom is a little scheme worthy of Lucy and Ethel for U.S. ships to escort oil tankers and other shipping vessels through the strait. Oh, okay, that sounds easy. Oh, but don't call it escorting. No, it's guiding. What's the difference? I don't know. Okay, all right. It's not a war, it's an excursion. You got to do your little Orwellian language games. Before the United States embarked on this ludicrous adventure, there were 100+ ships, some days close to 150, going through the Strait of Hormuz. Now? Maybe 2 or 3. So, Pentagon planners, you think you can fix it so our Navy will guide up to 150 ships per day through the strait? Okay. Good God. I'm a 100% civilian, layperson, sitting in my home studio, and I can tell you that this is the dumbest announcement we've heard so far. You're going to guide 100 ships through the strait every day, or 120, or 140, or whatever it was before. Okay, right, yeah. Plus, he didn't really seem to entertain the notion that the United States doesn't get to decide this on its own. There are other countries involved that may want to have a say in this. There are large private corporations, private companies with their own fleet of commercial vessels. There are large insurance companies that insure these vessels. How stupid do they think we are? Or, alternatively, how stupid are they? Do they believe this? I remember at one point in our conversation, I said they can't be stupid enough to think that Iran was another Venezuela. That with just dropping a few bombs, they could oust the leadership, and then the people who were left would be in their hip pocket and do whatever we told them to do. That's what happened in Venezuela. I said, they can't be that stupid to think Iran could be the same story. And now we're hearing reports from investigative journalists doing the digging. That's exactly what he thought. Even I didn't think he was that stupid. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. He can't think that. Well, apparently he did. What a f***ing moron this guy is. And he's just so desperate. He's just so desperate to get out of this thing. And Iran is calling his bluff with every move he makes. They're just giving him the finger. These Lego videos they're making are goddamn documentaries at this point. Well, just 48 hours after the much ballyhooed announcement of Project Freedom. Yeah, that's over now. That's done. We're done with that. Over those 2 whole days of Project Freedom that we'll remember with a lump in our throat, a grand total of 2 American cargo ships were guided through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, okay. Mission accomplished. Then Rubio comes out on Tuesday, and they let him play the main room. They put him in the White House press room, filled with quasi-journalists and influencers shouting for his attention. Yeah, they let him take a few major league swings. It was Rubio Tuesday, where he announced that Epic Fury is over. Combat operations are through. Well, what do you know? No more offense. We're only playing defense now. Of course, it contradicts everything the Orange Menace is saying at almost the exact same time, threatening more bombs, bigger and better than ever. So it continues to be Schrodinger's war. By the way, this appearance by Rubio in the White House, definitely throwing him a bone. The Orange Menace wants to see Marco and J.D. Vance fight it out for the presidential nomination. He puts them out into the arena to fight for his amusement, like a freaking Roman emperor. Because while Rubio was talking to the Washington press from the White House press room, looking all presidential, J.D. Vance was visiting Iowa. Gee, I wonder why J.D. Vance would visit the first Republican caucus state. So the 28 presidential campaign has already begun. The Orange Menace, well, we won't talk about his plans for 28. We'll save that for another time. By the way, Rubio really does have dry mouth. Remember the infamous State of the Union response where he had to desperately reach for a bottle of water? Every time he speaks, the dry mouth thing happens. I shouldn't make fun. I think it's a medical condition. The guy's got issues. He's got problems. I don't know how he thinks he's going to run for president. You got to make speeches. You got to talk to people. You got to stand at podiums. So the war, I don't know. It continues. It doesn't continue. It just, of course, the effects of the war absolutely continue. I saw a really disturbing interview on NewsHour this week. Nick Schifrin was interviewing the Assistant Executive Director of the World Food Program, Matthew Hollingworth. Of course, we know that 20% of the world's oil and natural gas goes through the strait. And because of the blockades, well, higher prices, not just here, but around the world, for everything. A lot of people can't afford to eat the basic commodities, the basic food they rely on. Hollingworth said that food prices across Central and Eastern Africa have increased by as much as 50% at a time when the World Food Program was already facing aid cuts. 1.5 million people they can no longer afford to help. In the next 3 months, they're estimating that figure will jump to 9 million more people unable to help. They predict the number of people who are food insecure will increase by 45 million by summer if the Strait of Hormuz isn't open. Humanitarian organizations are trying to create workarounds to avoid the strait, but Hollingworth says that's not sustainable. So the impact is worldwide, but it's only going to get worse. We're certainly feeling it here. In a matter of a couple of days, we saw 5 cents, then 7 cents, then 10-cent jumps, like overnight for gas. Of course, food, retail, durable goods, everything, inflation is absolutely going to hit the fan. It's already happening, but we haven't seen anything yet. If you have travel plans for this summer, take out a loan. Farmers are getting totally screwed. And I'm afraid we're going to see COVID-style shortages. Remember the empty store shelves, diapers, baby formula, orange juice, toilet paper, God knows what. Spirit Airlines, a canary in the coal mine. Yeah, I know. They've been in trouble for a long time. Go ahead and make your Spirit Airline jokes. Yeah, they were struggling, but this was the final nail. And let's not forget that 17,000 workers lost their jobs. 17,000 families are scrambling. These are real people. They're not punchlines. And in case you don't know it, these discount carriers that everybody jokes about, well, they're all in danger now. And they play a big role in keeping prices down across the industry. What do you think the big carriers will do when all the discount guys are out of business? For the good of this country, for the good of the planet, somehow, some way, we have to remove this damn regime. Impeach the whole damn lot. I mentioned the other day that the government of Iran doesn't really care about their citizens. They've proven that for decades. But it's becoming more and more clear that our regime doesn't give a damn about us. If we have to choose between driving our kids to school or feeding them, if we have to actually face those empty store shelves, who knows how far these war criminals are willing to go? If you hold a position of authority anywhere in the government, please use it to get rid of these people. The rest of us, we just got to keep hitting the streets. We got to keep striking, etc. With whatever's left of this democracy, we have to make it clear to those in power what we demand right now. I want to recommend a piece by Christopher Armitage. We've talked about him before here on this podcast. He's a writer I admire very much because he spends a lot of his time thinking and writing about what we can actually do about our problem instead of just whining about how bad it is. He's one of the few offering concrete solutions. And so I want to share one of those with you today. His Substack page is The Existential Republic. And this is from May 4, 2026. Headline, "This is way bigger than RICO. Is there a legal strategy that could put the entire Trump GOP criminal enterprise in jail without waiting for an election?" Okay, you got my attention. You may remember we talked about Christopher Armitage in the past and his advocacy for so-called soft secession, that blue states have it within their power. For that matter, red states and purple states also have it within their power, to the extent they want to use it, to create parallel systems, separate and apart from federal institutions. Blue states in particular have a certain power of the purse. They can deny tax revenues headed toward Washington, that sort of thing. So I encourage you in that direction as well. We've talked about it before, so-called soft secession, Christopher Armitage. Not sure he coined the phrase, but he certainly popularized it. But today, let's talk about this May 4 piece. Starts by citing an Eric Trump deal with the United Arab Emirates for a cool $500 million, just a matter of days before the Orange Menace was sworn in for his second term. Certainly worthy of criminal charges, but none have been brought. Anybody who heard about it, read about it, knew about it, was outraged, but as Armitage points out, outrage doesn't get you very far. It certainly may be justified, but it's ineffective. Instead, he proposes a prosecutorial strategy modeled on how organized crime was successfully prosecuted. He specifically references the 1985 Commission case against the Mafia's 5 families. That's the methodology he's asking us to use. And by us, I mean governors, attorneys general, anybody with standing. You know, you have to have standing to bring a case. Well, the beauty of it is we all have standing because we're all victims of his crimes, of his family's crimes. But I won't get ahead of myself here. Let me go through this a little more methodically. So historically, prosecutors have had a hard time convicting mafia bosses directly because they're insulated from their criminal acts. We know how it works. You got to do the thing with that guy. You can take care of it, right? We've all seen the movies. They create these very intentional layers of insulation from the bottom rungs of the organization to the top. Built-in deniability. So, of course, you start with the lower level operatives, the so-called soldiers. Use their testimony to reach the next level up. And you move up in the organization to the underbosses and then the bosses. And now when it's time to indict, this criminal enterprise has been established through prior convictions. The culpability of the leadership becomes easier to prove. This hierarchy can be toppled. So, of course, how this applies to the Orange Menace crime family and all the enablers, GOP writ large, kind of easy to see. It is a criminal enterprise. And the fact is, states can prosecute crimes committed within their borders, regardless of federal office. Federal officials, including presidents, are not immune from state criminal law. This principle extends to data crimes, to fraud, to violent misconduct, corruption tied to state jurisdictions. Any of these ring a bell as you think of the headlines of the last 16 months? And of course, federal agencies, the Department of Injustice is not going to follow up on any of this. Kash Patel's FBI is certainly not going to do it. So it's up to the states. Applying the mafia model to the Orange Menace criminal enterprise is like putting on a tailor-made suit. So you go after the actual individuals directly carrying out the crimes. The dodgy boys accessing our Social Security data without authorization. Obviously, this affects all of us across all states. Any state could bring this charge. The rampant corruption in contracting, SpaceX, XAI, violates state conflict of interest laws. ICE, their crimes are on camera, misconduct, assault, homicide, false imprisonment, excessive force. We've got it on tape, for God's sakes. The people who murdered Alex Preddy and Renee Good have faced zero consequences so far. They and the rest of them, including Emile Beauvais, are responsible for their crimes. Take it up a level. Kristi Noem, misrepresentation, unlawful detentions. Stephen Miller, for God's sakes, issuing the directives for all of this crap. Lying to the American people. More importantly, lying in court. Howard Nutlick, Secretary of Commerce, personal financial interests, not to mention his Jeffrey Epstein ties. Pam Bondi. Each one of these individuals and more are eligible for prosecution from state prosecutors. The lawyers, the advisors, there's a whole army of consiglieres. You've heard me refer to, acting AG Todd Blanche as the Orange Menace's consigliere. Providing justification for these crimes, drafting memos, leaving paper trails. Examples Armitage provides Lindsay Halligan, who signed contested indictments, the aforementioned Emile Beauvais, linked to alleged quid pro quo conduct. Many others. Lawyers involved in the Office of Legal Counsel. Records destruction. Yeah, lawyers are vulnerable. They can't just hide behind lawyer-client privilege. No, there are professional licensing requirements. That membership in the bar is not a license to steal. And continuing the comparison to crime families here, we have the underbosses. In this case, the family, the inner circle. Don Jr., Eric, all the investments, the large government contracts. Jared Kushner, the son-in-law, the sweetheart deal from Saudi Arabia, and others, while he's negotiating as a representative of the administration in the Middle East. I mean, come on. The Trump Organization itself, already found liable for fraud in New York. Which brings us to the boss, the Orange Menace himself. Positioned at the top of the structure, hard to pin him on direct orders. The closest we got was the text to Pam Bondi to go after Comey and Schiff and others. He thought it was a text, turned out to be a social media post. But again, you work it from the bottom rungs, and in the vernacular, you get the rats to flip, to snitch, become an informer, a government witness. Happens all the time. Again, you've seen the movies. You know how it works. And this is up to state-level actors. Governors can issue executive orders creating corruption task forces. They can direct their attorneys general to investigate. They can even seek emergency funding. There are 23 Democratic governors right now. State attorneys general hold authority to prosecute. It's already happened in New Jersey, in New York, Minnesota. Keith Ellison is pursuing ICE-related conduct. Even district attorneys and county prosecutors down to the county level have the authority to go after these people. State legislatures can create task forces, their own investigative committees. They can expand tools of prosecution in their jurisdiction. There are 15 states in this country that currently hold what they call a trifecta. That means they've got the governor and both houses of the state legislature. They can do this today. And that's key. There's no waiting. The courts aren't going to save us. Congress isn't going to save us. The midterms are still 6 months away. This is all about acting today. So, the bottom line for Christopher Armitage: the Orange regime is analogous to organized crime. It's an enterprise. And there's a proven method to prosecute such enterprises. You start with the lower level actors. You build the cases upward through cooperation and evidence. State and local authorities already have jurisdiction. They have the tools. And they're the only viable path forward, given the inaction of the courts, of Congress. Now, there's a political calculation. State officials might hesitate, fear of retaliation, political attacks. Maybe it sounds kind of risky for their careers. Well, that just means we need to pressure them. Again, as always, it comes back to us. As I've said 100 times on this program, lawmakers don't do the right thing just because it's the right thing. They do it because we give them no choice. We demand that they do the right thing. We leave them no other option. For your convenience, Christopher Armitage has already written the letters to your governor, to your state attorney general, to your district attorney or county prosecutor, to your state senator or representative. All you have to do is fill in with their name and address. It lays out the argument, provides the receipts, as they say. So I can't recommend highly enough. Once again, Christopher Armitage, May 4th, 2026, The Existentialist Republic on Substack, or on his website, but I found it on Substack. All right, let's go get him. Just want to remind you, this Sunday, May 10th, 12 noon, Steal This Story, Please, the new documentary about Amy Goodman and her program Democracy Now! Come and join us in Milwaukee at the Oriental Theater, Sunday, May 10th, 12 noon. Amy Goodman and the directors of the film will be there in person for a Q&A following the film. I'll be there. Look for me. Say hello. And thanks to our home station, River West Radio, WXRW in Milwaukee, for being a sponsor of this event. All right. This and all episodes can be heard at the website charlesburcell.com or on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Blue Sky and Substack. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio in Milwaukee. Peter Donalds wrote and performed our theme song. All right. I love you. I'll see you out there.